As COVID-19 spread, Black-owned small businesses paid a particularly hefty price. 40% of them are estimated to have closed forever. That got us thinking, how could the Facebook community support Black businesses in their time of need? It would take something bigger than any event on the calendar. So, we changed the calendar. Our answer was Buy Black Friday, a movement that claimed Black Friday for Black businesses and turned every Friday into an opportunity to buy Black. Premiering a month ahead of the traditional shopping season, we launched the Buy Black Friday Show.
Welcome to the Buy Black Friday Show, y'all.
A shoppable entertainment experience hosted by comedian Phoebe Robinson that featured businesses, Black creators, public figures, product demos, and special guests.
This week's theme is Good for the World, Game Changers.
People didn't just watch, they shopped. And we put Buy Black Friday everywhere we could. We turned Facebook's cover photo into a shoppable experience, created a gift guide, and challenged everyone to share the Black-owned businesses they love through Facebook.
It is going to take creativity to move past the current climate.
All Black everything.
Black artists, industry leaders, and influencers joined us, along with 37 brand partners. News media picked it up, and even Beyonce's mom showed some love. The live show received 86 million views. We drove over 200,000 click-throughs to businesses' pages, and 900,000 stories were made with the hashtag #BuyBlack sticker. But best of all, the businesses we featured saw exponential sales growth, with Redo reporting a 1,300% rise in sales. After all was said and done, we turned the biggest shopping season of the year into the best time to buy Black.
Hello, everyone. I'm Congressman Stephen Horsford, and I have the honor of representing Nevada's 4th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives, as well as serving as the first Vice Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. I'm glad to be able to have this conversation on how we can address the impacts of COVID-19 from both a public and private standpoint for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and this annual legislative convening. Over the last year and a half, our country has suffered one of the worst crises of the modern era. The COVID-19 pandemic is an unprecedented crisis that forced us to fundamentally change the way that we live our lives. Everyone adapted to a new way of life, from distance learning, remote working, social distancing, and so much more. In my home state of Nevada, we experienced the highest rate of unemployment in the country last summer, toppling over 30%. This is due to our economy's focus on hospitality and tourism industries. And so when people were told to stay home, my state suffered and the people in it the most. That's why getting our economy back on track is one of my top priorities for this Congress. Earlier this year, I worked with President Biden to pass the American Rescue Plan, our relief package that aims to boost our economy by delivering mass vaccinations and in providing direct relief to working Americans. Since the American Rescue Plan was signed into law, we've already seen extraordinary results. This relief has helped jumpstart our economy with growth faster than at any time in the last 40 years, and the addition of more than 3.2 million jobs, essentially equating to the largest increase in total number of jobs during any administration's first 100 days on record. This strong economic growth is reaching working Americans' pockets, with hourly workers earning higher wages, enabling them to support their families and to reinvest in their local economy. American families are also receiving a significant and historic tax cut from the American Rescue Plan in the form of the expanded child tax credit. The American Rescue Plan increased the child tax credit to $3,600 for children under 6 and $3,000 for children 6 to 17, and made more families eligible. I recently released a study that showed that this tax cut pumped nearly $180 million into Nevada's economy and delivered $143 million directly to the pockets of hardworking Nevada families. In addition to families, the American Rescue Plan has also delivered aid directly to our local businesses. The Restaurant Relief Fund and the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant programs administered by the Small Business Administration have delivered billions to restaurants, entertainment venues, and other businesses that were negatively impacted by the pandemic. Also included in the American Rescue Plan is funding to help families stay housed during the pandemic, afford health care and prescription medication, and to help get children back into school safely. Earlier this year, I joined elected officials throughout Nevada to welcome our students back to campus. And I'm so proud of the impact of this legislation, and working together with partners that are in this session with me is really the best way that we can continue to build back better. This desperately needed relief was vital to help Las Vegas, Nevada, and our entire district and the state, as well as our country, begin to bounce back from this pandemic. But we're not done yet. We still have to get our friends, our families, and our loved ones vaccinated to protect them and our communities. Recovery means defeating this virus, and that remains a top priority for me. So now I'd like to turn it over to our panelists for a brief introduction. I want to start with my good friend, my colleague, someone who I work very closely with in our community, Commissioner William McCurdy II. He has been really leading, along with the Clark County Commission, the rapid response relief effort, helping families get the vaccination, helping food distribution sites, as well as back to school efforts. So Commissioner McCurdy, it's great to have you on. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Congressman, for all of your diligent work on behalf of the 4th Congressional District here in Las Vegas and here in Nevada. It has been just a time of getting back to resilience, if you will, or solving for resilience as we navigate our way out of this pandemic. What we've been able to do because of your leadership just over this past year and a half is directly triage the situation as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. And for example, one thing that we did here in Clark County as a fact of passage of, I guess you would call it CARES 1.0, where we in Clark County had an opportunity to receive over $275 million, is provide immediate assistance to the people in need. As you stated, we had the highest unemployment rate per capita of any other state in the United States of America. And just to give you a brief snapshot and give our viewers a brief snapshot of what we did here in Clark County, I'll just give you a few numbers. We provided rental assistance, the County Housing Assistance Program, which we call CHAP, the CHAP Assistance Grant that we have here in Clark County. We provided over 30,000 households rental assistance to remain housed throughout this pandemic. In addition to paying over 65,000 utility accounts paid, making sure that no one went without electricity or the basic needs that they need to make sure that they keep their families safe and going through some of the hottest summers that we have ever seen here in Clark County in modern history. We've been able to mitigate over 2,000 folks from being able keeping them from being able to get evicted, but we didn't stop there. We had an intense focus on making sure that we provided over half of those $275 million to basic human services programs. And that's where we are right now. And as we shift from emergency response and rapid response here in Clark County, we're now transitioning because of your work and through the passage of the American Rescue Plan Act and the allocation that Clark County has received over $440 million. We're now getting to a point to where we can rebuild back better and be more resilient than ever before, so that in the face of future emergencies or pandemics, we will be able to hold our weight, if you will. So now we are going through community after community, and thanks to you again, Congressman, and all of Congress, we now can go on qualified census tract, which you know represent the hardest hit communities, not only in terms of economic activity well before the COVID pandemic even happened, but also looking at these exact communities that were overrepresented in terms of COVID vaccination or the lack of vaccinations being provided in those communities, and also an overrepresentation in how COVID-19 impacted our communities in terms of being victims of COVID-19. So we are having conversations. We're now talking about how we're going to provide immediate assistance to our small businesses, looking at what we're going to do to help our nonprofits who were so instrumental in helping us to combat COVID-19, but also looking at what we're going to do to retool, because as you know, our economy was devastated and we are the most susceptible because of our lack of diversification. But I believe because of these dollars that have been pumped into Clark County, we will be able to solve for what I am saying that the word of this year is resilience. And that is what we have to solve for as we look at allocating these funds all across Clark County. But we've received billions of dollars here in the state of Nevada. And we're, if you will, I would say, punching above our weight in terms of what we were able to do. But it was only because of the strong and effective and resilient leadership of the Nevada delegation led by my Congressman Stephen Horsford. Shout out to you again, sir. But we wouldn't have been able to get those allocations into the state of Nevada had it not been for your leadership. And we're just beginning. And I know that it's going to be a long road ahead. But as you always state, Congressman, help is on the way. And you have people who are working at every level to make sure that we beat back this pandemic and build back stronger than ever. So I thank you for allowing me to join you. And I look forward to continue to work alongside you as we get our people back to work and as we build a more resilient economy.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. And again, I cannot commend you and the entire Clark County Commission for all of your tremendous leadership, really boots on the ground in the community, making sure that the relief from the American Rescue Plan to address COVID-19 really does reach every single individual and every single community that it's intended to. So we've got more work to do, but thank you for discussing how these federal efforts have been a support to the constituents throughout Southern Nevada. We're known as the entertainment capital of the world, and we are going to crush this virus, and we are going to come back even stronger. So I definitely want to bring our other panelists into the conversation, and I want to thank them for joining us as well. I'm going to turn it over next to Mr. Henderson and then Mr. Randall to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Joseph Henderson. I'm the president and CEO of ECF Data. We're an IT services company based in Las Vegas, Nevada, but with national reach. We take customers on their IT solution journey from assessment and planning to design to deployment and migration, while providing operational services to the end throughout the end user engagement. In addition, we layer change management and user adoption services through the life cycle of the engagement. And through the course of this pandemic, it's been kind of challenging for all of us, particularly small businesses, particularly businesses located in Nevada. And so we help them, particularly around communications, collaboration, while doing that securely. And so through that, we were able to provide them mechanisms to where they can work remotely through the pandemic and able to sustain their businesses through the life cycle and through this pandemic that we're experiencing. And it's still going on today, particularly with this Delta variant that's going on. It's increasingly impacting us back in Nevada. And so we're still working with those small businesses to help them sustain their business from a technology standpoint through this.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I'm glad to have small businesses like yours engaged in the recovery and particularly the expertise that you provide. And I'm a big advocate for data-driven decision-making. It's one of the major areas of focus that we are working on. It's one of the issues that was exposed during COVID-19 and the lack of data, not just in healthcare, but in our economic programs, in the programs related to small businesses, for those who are seeking support for employment and training. So thank you for being a part of this conversation today.
Thank you.
Mr. Randall?
Hello, Congressman. Chris Randall with Facebook's U.S. policy team in Washington, D.C. And part of my job is to work with federal policymakers like yourself on key issues of intersectionality between Facebook's mission of connecting people and businesses to one another and Congress's public policy priorities. I was thankful to have the opportunity to work with your team a few months ago on the census, where you led the effort to make sure that the Census Bureau was accurately counting Americans all over so that they could get the resources that they needed. And as part of your work, you inspired Facebook to ensure that we put interstitials all across the platform to remind people to take the census and be counted. I was thankful to have the opportunity to work with you last year when you brought together faith houses. And we were able to talk to faith communities about how they could use Facebook and Instagram to connect with their worshipers and to resume their spiritual activities and to resume their ministries. So it's been a pleasure working with you, Congressman. It's been a pleasure to witness your leadership in Washington, D.C. And I look forward to working with you and with Congress on future priorities to make sure that Facebook serves the community of users well.
Thank you, Christopher. And it's been great to have you as a partner there at Facebook and to really, as you said, know how we can fully utilize the technology to help support communities, help provide, accurate information that really does help connect communities, get resources out. And, sometimes there's the, wrap around misinformation, but the best form of misinformation is to get out accurate information. And I know you all have been partnering with us in that regard. So we'll look forward to continuing to do that. Let's get into a little bit of the conversation today. Maybe if you could talk to us a little bit, Christopher, and then I'm going to just refer to you as Joseph, if that's okay. We're going to talk to you a little bit, if you could, about how the pandemic has shifted your operations and how you responded based on the new situation that we're in, still fighting COVID and looking to crush it.
Yes, yeah, it has been, responding to this pandemic in a way that users find valuable has been a priority for Facebook. On our platform is where small business thrives, right? A baker can advertise, a musician can put their favorite song or put their best music on the platform and grow their name. But during the pandemic, the virtual space did not allow for the business growth in the physical space because people could not go out into the physical world. So we had to change our approach to making sure that small businesses and communities and community-based organizations were better served on the platform. What that meant was, first thing, take a survey, right? We issued a survey out to small businesses and we said, what do you need? What are your biggest struggles? What are your biggest opportunities during this pandemic crisis? And what a lot of them said was, we just don't have time. We don't have time to be on social media as much, amplifying our work, our business, because we need to respond to this new dynamic here. So what we did was we instituted new training for small businesses called Boost, but we made them all virtual, meaning Facebook experts would hold virtual events for local communities, and we would invite businesses to listen to advice about how to best market yourself, how to best allocate your resources and get your name and your business growing under these new circumstances. In addition to that, what we did was we announced a $100 million grant program for Black-owned businesses, creators and nonprofits. And we created basically what's called the Buy Black Friday, right? Because what we wanted to do was we wanted to train you through the Boost program We wanted to create a grant program for businesses to be able to respond to the pandemic and to still grow during the pandemic. But what we also wanted to do was we wanted to create an opportunity for businesses to get their name out, right? And so on Buy Black Friday, what Facebook will do is we will celebrate Black businesses that will sell their wares on Facebook or Instagram. We will highlight them and we hope to drive up their business. So the short answer to your question, Congressman, is we had to take a brand new look at our role vis-a-vis our business users, and we had to make sure that we were tailoring product and programs to better fit their needs.
Thank you. And again, that emphasis on, particularly the Black-owned businesses, again, we know that everyone was impacted in one way or another by COVID, but the impact was disproportionately felt by communities of color, especially the Black community. And there was a report at one point that indicated that almost 40% of Black-owned businesses, particularly Black-owned businesses started by women, really struggled to keep open. And that was why these programs were so important. But, unfortunately, even the response to those programs weren't treated the same way. A lot of the larger and mid-sized businesses that were established longer were able to access some of that funding first. And that left a lot of smaller entrepreneurial businesses kind of still trying to get their share of that support. So I really do commend Facebook for that effort and initiative that you started and the information that you've helped to provide to small businesses. Joseph, how have you had to adapt in your business, your operations, and shift any of your operational focus?
I think in my business, we were already well on the way in terms of being able to support workers remotely. To be honest, a lot of my staff was already, we're pretty geographically diverse throughout the country, and actually throughout the world. We have operational teams in other countries as well. So we're already pretty geographically dispersed in the way that we do business. And so because we were already geographically dispersed, we took our lessons learned and how we did it, and then how we managed teams that were remote, and then applied that to our customer base and to small businesses. So what we found, and we always talked about early on during the pandemic, is that we always talked to our customers about digital transformation and kind of what that meant and kind of how to go about it, and need to start planning for digital transformation and what cloud solutions were. And a lot of companies, organizations, big or small, were not willing to adapt to that digital transformation or kind of want to go down that path. And what we found, and what we kind of laughed at later on, which is what, not so much, because what the result was because of the pandemic and digital transformation, a lot of companies were adapted sooner rather than later. And so we had been years talking to organizations about digital transformations. They were looking to transform their organization within 30 to 120 days, which we found shocking. And the pandemic forced that. It forced organizations to examine their business and how they do business and how they can do it more efficiently and effectively from a remote standpoint. And so, digital transformation for us, when we look back at it, for a lot of organizations, were done very quickly, as opposed to when we were trying to get them to lead up to that over the years. And so for us, we were kind of already there, but we took our lessons learned and applied to other organizations, which made us successful. Our business actually thrived during the pandemic because we were in the IT services space, because we had lessons learned, and because we had to start those conversations prior to the pandemic with organizations that we support.
Yeah, we heard that a lot of businesses that found an opportunity even in COVID to fill a gap, redirect a product line or a service. So for you in IT and cloud, you called it digital transformation. So talk to us about what that is, what that means, and how it's applied in the business world.
Yeah, it's kind of about reimagine how you bring together people, data, and processes to create a value for your customers and maintain a competitive advantage in a digital first world. And so it's really kind of what I touched on earlier around how we collaborate internally as an organization, and then how we collaborate to our partners, and how we collaborate to vendors as well as to our customers. And bringing all those mechanisms together for those collaborations tools to interact. So there's seamless processes and process flows in place from internal, external, and then out to the customer. And doing that in a very seamless way, using tools and technology of today to make that very seamless for organizations. And so, case in point, one of the big tools that we've seen in terms of deployment was around Microsoft Teams. I'm pretty sure everybody's seen the Microsoft Teams commercials, and some people have experience with it. Microsoft put a big push into that even before the pandemic, and even more so, we saw more and more commercials around Teams. And so what Teams does, and what we're educating customers around, is around using one platform to satisfy all your communication and collaboration needs. Meaning a lot of organizations have, like, let's take for instance, they have Zoom, right? And so they use Zoom to do their video conferencing, right? And then they may have some sort of phone system, whether it's a Via PBX, some other Cisco, et cetera. They may use Facebook to do communications out to their customers. So then they have some other document management system running in the background. So what Teams allow organizations to do, they use to have a single client across, whether it's your PC, your Mac, your mobile device, your browser, et cetera, that enable you to do meetings, as well as make inbound and outbound phone calls, as well as provide a wrapper to the back end to document management files, et cetera, where you can share that internally, externally with customers, and then provide other applications that you can bring into that application. So we utilize that and leverage that to enable customers to do that securely and effectively in their organizations. And so that helped facilitate and fuel digital transformation within that organization, to bring everybody into one platform where all that they can see their data, they can see their communications, they can see their collaborations, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and it sounds technical, but in our everyday life, we are now, using information, like you said, whether it's on our phone, in the digital space and work, kids with learning and parents with having to support them. And my sense is there's certain things that we learned during COVID that may mean we don't return to the old way. And so how will digital transformation continue, knowing that it was already kind of on path, but it was maybe accelerated because everyone had to adapt, or at least those who had access. But my second part of my question, so if you answer maybe the first part, Joseph, the second part, Christopher, is then how do we address the literacy gap, the digital literacy gap that may exist? I know with the number of my constituents in Nevada's 4th District, whether they're business owners, whether they are parents, educators, there was a gap in their ability to effectively use these tools. And a lot of times it was the students that was teaching the teachers how to, start class, which, shouldn't be the way it is. But how do we address that? So first, Joseph, are we going to stay in this space? And if so, what does that mean for our future? And Christopher, how do we address those digital literacy gaps that may exist?
Yes, I definitely think we're going to stay in that space, just because I think organizations have learned how to, first they've adapted, right? Big or small, they've adapted. Two, a lot of organizations, in particular people, they may not want to come back into the office. And a lot of organizations, particularly larger organizations, my enterprise customers, they're allowing folks to make a decision, right? Depending on function, you can either come back into the office or not. So it's definitely here to stay. I think that the tools that I've talked about, that things that Facebook has done and some of the other organizations that are out there will allow this to continue to fuel. I think in terms of, the literacy, even before the pandemic, particularly with our schools, we do a lot of work with schools inside of Las Vegas. And so we've actually, with that Teams application, even prior to the pandemic, we're going into schools, trying to get them to utilize Teams to do in-house class teaching, right? So Teams allows the teachers, and we've done training at several schools in Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada, around Teams and how it can use as a learning platform. And so they have tools built into that, tools like Immersive Reader, which allows students to learn how to read at any skill level and providing them tools within inside of Teams to do that. And so there's curriculum specialized around Microsoft product called Minecraft that fuels education. And so we work with several Clark County School District schools, and that we actually still tend to today internally these learning tools to help fuel that education, and starting with our students, and then they carry that forward through their life and through university life and through working in the US.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, Joseph, the thing that Facebook is really keyed in on right now is this infrastructure package, which I know Congressman Horsford is working really hard on. And the reason is because of support for broadband. Why that matters to Facebook is because we would love to see providers amplify broadband, and we want to partner with providers to amplify broadband. Our connectivity teams, for example, will work with local providers in rural areas and in urban areas where there's still a digital divide to basically boost signal at libraries, at churches, so that kids don't have to go to public places to do their homework. Their local church will boost wireless signal to their home, right? And so when providers are getting the support that they need from the infrastructure package, they're more willing to work with us. We can match funds and we can go boost signal. So through our connectivity programs, we will definitely be in places like Nevada, in places like the South, and in the urban parts of the Northeast, where, for example, in some public housing facilities, internet signal is not strong. And we're going to be there partnering with providers to boost signal. But once you boost signal, people have to connect. And so they need devices, right? Facebook's programming comes into key here. So what we've done, for example, it's at a school in Mississippi called Piney Woods, is we provided virtual reality headsets for their students there. And we partnered with a curriculum provider to help those kids learn their anatomy and physiology class. So imagine, if you will, the magic school bus, but you put on a virtual reality headset, and instead of seeing it on the television, you're going through the anatomy of the human body, and you're learning it that way in an immersive experience. So we're providing that hardware that kids can connect to in the classroom. But what we're also doing is we're working with curriculum providers to educate teachers and to get them up to speed on what they need to know, because we recognize, like you said, Congressman, that there is a bit of a divide, and we have to get everyone coached up and competent on those skills. So that's what we're doing in the school system. At home, what we're doing for the digital training, and this is for faith-based organizations, for community-based organizations, this is for citizens who are concerned about civics, and everyone in between. What we're doing is we're sending out digital skills training. So if you were to go to one of our boost trainings, which we've done in dozens of cities across the nation, what you would learn is digital skills, how to use the internet, how to use social media. You would learn skills about identifying misinformation, right? Using credible sources. You would be paired with experts who can tell you about how to access quality news sources on the internet and social media platforms. And so we're pumping resources into these programs because we want people to, one, get connected, have the devices that they need to do the learning and connecting that they want to do, but then also when they're in their communities, have access to quality information, have access to real information that they need to move their lives forward. We're doing that on the business sense, in the school sense, and in the community. It's a really, really big important, particularly for communities of color, to have access to accurate information about civics, about COVID-19, and about where they can go to support other Black and brown businesses in the community. And so Facebook is really keyed in on connectivity, getting folks devices, and getting folks trained up on digital skills.
And so how would an organization connect to those opportunities? I know we work to conduct webinars, yes, where we engage leaders in our community, in my district. But if someone's watching right now, what's the best way for them to get connected to those opportunities?
Yes. You can search for Boost, Facebook with Boost with Facebook. You can also go through your local congressman's office. So, for example, when we did the faith-based training, Congressman Horsford, you were great at facilitating bringing those people together. And then a lot of those churches and faith houses came to me, and we set them up with individual training sessions, right? You can go through Instagram, for example, and look at the Buy Black programs. You can go to Facebook connectivity. You can search for Facebook connectivity projects and learn about all of the broadband and wireless boosting programs that we're doing. So there's a host of places that you can go. But I want to make myself available, Congressman, to the policymakers in Washington, D.C., and to your constituents. So if folks want to reach out to me personally, I'm happy to provide my email address to make sure that we can answer the questions that people need. So I will be happy to provide that. It's Chris Randle, ChrisRandle @fb.com. So for anyone who's watching this, your constituents, congressmen, they can email me, and we'd be happy to pair them up with programming that works for their business needs, their community needs, and their education needs.
Great. So this is all very valuable. And, coming back to the beginning of the conversation, obviously, when we passed the American Rescue Plan and the $1.9 trillion of funding, it's the largest relief package ever approved by Congress. Obviously, this is an unprecedented pandemic. And so it required an unprecedented response. And the funding that now comes to the state, local governments, and the school districts is now partly in response to making sure that recovery reaches the communities that have been hardest hit. My district does include some of those rural counties in Nevada that you talked about that are underserved from a broadband standpoint. And I have urban, we call them kind of digital deserts, where there's still a lack of broadband access in some of even my urban communities, either because they can't afford the service, the internet service, or there still is a lack of connectivity in some areas. But one of the things that I've heard really a lot from parents, especially in the school district, and maybe Joseph, you can relay on this, is, they have access, but we're talking about whole new technology that didn't exist a decade, definitely not decades ago. And so for parents, who are working with supporting their children, I think, again, as we are returning to in-person learning, now there's still going to be some component to digital learning or support that parents might be able to provide their students, their children, I should say, in the course of learning. So where's the cultural competency elements in some of this? I'm talking to two Black men that are part of organizations that help lead this from a technology standpoint for all communities. But how do we ensure that there's a cultural competency approach in how we are approaching digital learning and the digital tools that are available?
Yeah, so I would love to tackle that. Cultural competency is critical. If I, as a young black boy growing up in LA, didn't have someone to reach out and teach me about the world of technology, I wouldn't be where I am today. And we have so many brilliant young people out there who just need the spark, who just need the connection, right, to the resource, to the person that can coach them up. For me, what that meant was, in my role, I wanted Facebook to support scholarships for young people to start learning about technology and tech policy issues. And so we're giving away $100,000 scholarships. I mean, 100,000 scholarships to Black students working towards digital skills certifications through what we're calling the Facebook Blueprint program. For us, it really begins with these.
How many scholarships again?
The Facebook Blueprint program is giving away 100,000 scholarships to Black students who are trying to pursue education in digital skills. And the reason why we're doing this is because we recognize that for some people, they don't see themselves in technology, right? They don't see themselves in Silicon Valley. They are not aware of the jobs and the opportunities that are available. And sometimes, even if they're aware of them, there are financial hurdles in the way, right? Or there might be an exigency that forces them to help family pay a bill. And so they can't necessarily take the digital skills training because they've got to work a shift to help family out, right? We want to solve for that. And we want to provide young people scholarships so that they can learn about opportunities in tech and in the digital space. So that's one thing that we're doing. And we're seeing some really promising results, because oftentimes the partners that we work with for these trainings, for these digital skills trainings, they see these bright minds and they want to hire them because they're so creative. They're on the cutting edge of everything. They're on the platforms, they're on the internet all the time. And then once they learn how to master the platform, how to code, right, and how to do the business of the internet, they're unstoppable. So that's where our work is taking us as a platform.
Yeah, so from my standpoint, so me personally, I have a vested interest in that, right? So I live here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I have kids here, grandkids, family, etc. So I take that investment and I kind of go about it in a multi-fashion approach. So one, we do the scholarships, and we do that through partner organizations. So that's one. Two, in terms of interaction, I think that's key. So me personally, I'll walk into the classrooms, and when we're giving away devices, when we're starting the programs at these schools to say, hey, this is a new learning methodology platform that you can utilize. And so seeing me there as a mouthpiece helps, right? You see, hey, this guy's done it. He's the same complexion as me. He owns an IT services company. So that's probably that's pretty key. Because if I saw that, no telling where I would have gotten further much faster, right? And so to influence kids just by my presence being there from a leadership standpoint of what I've accomplished helps tremendously, I believe. So we do the devices, we do the scholarships, but showing up is key. Taking a vested interest in those kids and those families is key. Then we also work from a small business perspective. We work through the Urban Chamber of Commerce here locally, actually sit on the board. We work through those to provide learning assistance where we're doing classes around digital transformation and the various business applications that are out there. And then in addition to that, we have incubator at the Urban Chamber to help try to grow these businesses in the community and provide a technological background to them so they can ask questions, so we can provide resources. We donated several computers to the incubator center that are on the latest technology for them to utilize and to work with.
Thank you for all of that, Joseph. And it is good when students can see someone who looks like them in the field that we want them to pursue. And I look forward to continuing to partner with you. I just met with the Clark County School District to discuss how they're utilizing the $770 million funding from the American Rescue Plan, again, in addressing equity and learning loss and digital learning gaps that were exposed during the pandemic. And so definitely want to be supportive in your efforts in making sure that those resources are available to more schools in Clark County. Let me shift from education to small businesses, back to small businesses, and entrepreneurship, is one of the fastest growing sectors, and particularly for Black women. We want to get more Black men starting businesses as well. And I know Commissioner McCurdy and I are actually working to establish a new micro business complex in our district. And he's prioritized that project at the county level. And we've helped secure about $1 million so far at the federal level towards this program, in addition to the state legislation through the Nevada Grow program, which I know the Urban Chamber has been a big proponent of bringing those resources into the community. So specifically, what do we need to do to help Black-owned businesses from a digital space, technology space, and what are some of the opportunities to help them get better positioned in some of the products, services, or initiatives that either one of you are leading?
Yeah, we got to reach them, right? So we know that they're on the platforms, right? We know that they're on Facebook, and we know that they're on Instagram, and so our leadership at Facebook has set out a goal of reaching and training 1 million members of the Black community who are business owners to elevate their social media presence, to elevate their digital skills savvy. So we are on track to meet that $100 million mark. But I want to talk about, and this is something new that we haven't announced yet, Congressman, and this came directly out of an interaction that I had with your team over the course of talking about how to help faith houses and Black businesses survive the pandemic. So out of that conversation that we had several months ago, Congressman, a few of the small businesses reached out to me personally, and they said, yeah, it's great that you're doing the programs for digital skills training. We really appreciate it. It's great that you're doing the grants, but how can we, as small businesses, partner with large tech companies, right? And then we looked at the numbers and we said, yeah, we should really do something about reaching out to Black businesses and figuring out where there's opportunities for contracting. And so we're making an explicit focus on identifying and supporting Black-owned suppliers across the wide range of goods and services that we buy. A lot of people don't know that at Facebook, when you go into the office, we have chefs that prepare food for you. You've got workout facilities. I mean, our offices are big. They're like little cities. And so we want to be able to contract with new suppliers in areas, including the contingent workforce, construction, real estate, cybersecurity, Joseph, facilities operators, management consulting, creative marketing, you name it, right? So we talk to these people, Congressman Horsford, and what we are prepared to do is increase our spend with Black-owned suppliers, 25% year over year. So basically, the numbers are going to look like around 100 million with Black-owned suppliers in 2021. And what we hope to do is roll this out in a website and let people come to the website and see how they can come and do business with Facebook. But Congressman, I want to say from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate the interaction that we had, because it was the spark that led to this idea. And I'm really pleased that we can start to roll out this program toward the end of August.
Well, thank you, Christopher. Really excited to hear that news. And I know more details will be forthcoming, and we'll make sure that the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation shares that throughout their network, and those 100,000 scholarships as well for Black students pursuing careers or opportunities, entrepreneurship in technology. So thank you for both of those efforts and investments, because we do ask a lot from the private sector, like what is being done in a very measurable, quantifiable way. And this is one of those specific areas. So thank you for that. Joseph?
Congressman, first of all, I would love to work with you and the commissioner on that. I'm actually working actively with things like that inside the Urban Chamber as part of an incubation committee to develop those needs and what those needs are. So we're actively looking at that and looking to develop those and looking to put things into place. So, whatever's needed from ECF and from myself, just please let me know and how I can get connected to help along with that, as well as with you, Chris. Even if we're not a supplier of Facebook, we would love to help with that initiative in any way possible that we can. And so in our research and the kind of things that we're doing is really around is definitely education, education around the various technologies. And then from a mentorship, right, and develop mentorships with other successful businesses and how they're doing it, whether it's across, marketing, finance, management, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of our businesses need those. They may be strong in an area or a particular area, or they may be good at, developing whatever their product is, but they may be lacking in terms of, financial skills, or may be lacking in terms of marketing skills. And so through mentorship and working with other successful organizations around that, we think that we'll find a good solution to help educate and bring these businesses along in terms from an entrepreneurship so they can grow their business and sustain. And so one of my big initiatives is kind of around, economic reinvestment of these businesses back into Las Vegas, Nevada. And so what I found in being here, the last 8 years or so, is that a lot of businesses, especially at the corporate level, they tend to go out of state to look for vendors instead of looking in-house. And so that's damaging to the economy here in Las Vegas, right? Because then we're not reinvesting back into Nevada, back into Las Vegas, those dollars in terms of to the families, et cetera. So I want to have these entrepreneurs ships where they're growing their companies, but they're reinvesting back into the community, right? They're hiring people locally, they're sourcing things locally so that we get those economic dollars back into our communities, and then that we're not so reliant on the travel industry, right? So that we become more horizontal in what we're doing in terms of our industries here. And so that we may see sector impacts, but it's not as detrimental as we've seen with the pandemic.
That is a clear roadmap, and I completely agree with the need, as you wrapped up there, Joseph, on diversification. Technology, IT is one of the multiple sectors that we as a state can grow in, but we need to make sure that as we develop these new sectors that it is more inclusive and it's more representative of the changing demographics. The census numbers just came out, and Nevada is actually the third most diverse state based on our growth and changes in demographics. And that's phenomenal, but it needs to be reflected in every sector. And, technology, renewable energy, manufacturing are those spaces. And so we will absolutely take you up on your offer, Joseph, to work with Commissioner McCurdy and I on that micro business park. It's a community-led effort, and we need the expertise of folks like you. And thank you for emphasizing the points around capacity building. A lot, and again, this is an issue that got exposed during the American Rescue Plan processes, that we don't do enough to build capacity. And that's true of our healthcare system, but it's also true of these other areas. And as we build back better, we have to do it in a more equitable and inclusive way. So I want to thank our panelists for their perspectives on how COVID-19 and the pandemic has impacted their organizations. And as I said at the beginning, we know that this pandemic has touched every part of our community, from our workforce to our schools, our small businesses, and our social services. So as we rebuild, we need to ensure that we are providing all of our communities, businesses, and families with the resources that they need to build back better. When I was working with President Biden to pass the American Rescue Plan, we understood that full recovery would not happen overnight. That's why this bill, the American Rescue Plan, invests in a longer-term recovery along with the American Jobs and Infrastructure Act, to help us build back better over the months, years, and decades to come. Before the pandemic, our economy and existing social service safety net weren't working for every Nevadan or every American to begin with. Even as the economy boomed, there were too many hardworking people who were struggling to make ends meet. Funding from the American Rescue Plan finally allows us to fill many of these gaps that existed in our systems before, and to help ensure that we are better prepared to face the challenges that may come in the years ahead. So conversations like the one we had today will inform myself and other members of the Congressional Black Caucus on how we can best advocate for those in our communities and how we can target legislation directly to those in need. So partnerships between government and private companies really allow us to have a diverse array of solutions to the unique challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought on and its impact on our economy. So again, I want to thank the participants in the panel today. Thank you very much, Joseph Henderson and Christopher Randall, as well as Commissioner McCurdy. We really appreciate your time and participation. And of course, to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, thank you all for joining this annual legislative conference. Thank you for supporting the CBCF and its mission. Take care, everybody.